Hi. One of the questions I get from a lot of my students is whether I should take a gap year before graduate school. And that's a pretty difficult question to answer because it's really based on the individual situation. I guess we should first start with defining exactly what a gap year is. Well, it's taking some time between or before the next level of education. Some students take a gap year between high school and undergraduate. Sometimes, and the ones I'm primarily talking about, is the gap year between an undergraduate degree and either a master's or doctorate degree. And then, of course, you could also take a gap year between your master's degree and your doctorate degree. The gap year could be a semester, a year, or more. In my case, I actually had a few years between my master's and my doctorates. And even though I started immediately into my master's after my master's was spread out over many years. So it was almost like I had a gap year figured in there. Right. So there are some reasons not to take a gap year. I think that, you know, and legitimately so, you might lose momentum if you decide to take that gap year. You're there, you're in school, you're doing great, and you just want to keep maintaining that momentum and just go right through it. I think most faculty members, they tend to stay in it because they have that momentum after their undergraduate, and then they go right into their graduate program immediately after. That was not my case, but I think most faculty, that's the route they go. Also a waste of time. I hear a lot of students say, I'm not getting any younger. I need to get into this graduate program now because I'm getting older. And my thought is, 1 year probably doesn't make a lot of difference for the vast majority of us. But I get it. If you feel like you're an older student than other students and um, you don't want to feel like you're wasting time, I understand that pressure. But I also think it's better not to put that pressure on yourself, which we'll explain why here in a minute. You may lose contact with teachers or professors who can write letters of recommendation if you take a semester, a year, or 2 years off. And my response always to the students is, well, then keep contact with the teachers or professors. Send them an occasional update email. If you know that there's a particular person that you want to write a letter of recommendation for you in the future, then maintain contact. Either stop by their office hours, even when you're not a student, send an email. And if it's been a while since you've talked to them, send a professional picture along with that email just to refresh your memory of who you are if you're not sure if they'll remember you or not. Another one is that research has shown that generally standardized test scores, such as a GRE, often go down after a person graduates. The longer they are from their graduation date, the worse they tend to do on those exams. However, that doesn't have to be the case because you could, focus part of that gap year on studying for the standardized tests. Difficulty going back to school. I can tell you that's very true. I was making very good money after my bachelor's. As a public school teacher, I made good money. And then working in social services after my master's, I made really good money. And it was difficult to go back to poverty, especially for my PhD. And especially given how much, my salary was at the time when I left that good paying job. And of course, my family could not understand that at all. Why would you give up a good paying job to go back to school to make less money? And, it was hard to answer, but bottom line, life quality. And then also the transition back to school can be difficult. If you've taken some time off, you may have forgotten some of those things that may make your graduate program easier. For example, if you're going into a research-oriented graduate program and you haven't had math in a while, it may take you a little while to get back into the practice of doing, mathematical computations like in your statistics class, for example. Even just getting self-discipline to study, in the evenings, can be tricky for you. Or your life situation may have changed, such as getting married and having kids that could make that transition hard. But I do think there are a lot of good reasons to take a gap year. One is that if you're just completely burned out, from school and you just need to take some time to recharge or re-energize, then I think that could be a pretty legitimate reason for taking some time off. I also think that if you are unsure which graduate program to apply to, that you should probably take a gap year. You don't want to end up in a program that then later you find out is not the right program for you. And as much as I appreciate the education I got in my master's program, it really was not the program that was putting me on the path for what I knew I wanted to do in the long term. And so I could argue that, going into that master's program wasted a lot of my time, but I always like to reframe things in a positive manner. And so I tell myself that I gained a lot of valuable experience that makes me better at what I do today. So if I were doing it over, probably what I would do is take that gap year and figure out, my future, what I really wanted to do, and research graduate programs that would help get me towards that future. Like I said earlier, I did go straight into the master's program, but really I was just taking one class at a time. And so it was almost like I had a gap year, but because I started taking that class, I felt committed to finish it. And that was probably a mistake on my part. But again, I gained a lot from it. So I just have to settle myself down with that. Next, I think, take a gap year to gain experience, whether that's finding an internship, doing volunteer work, or finding a job in the field that's going to help me make a more informed decision about which type of graduate program I want to apply to. I think, for example, in my field of psychology or in family science, that a lot of times students graduate and there's so many different options and they just don't really know what it is they want to do. And so it makes a lot of sense to go out and start getting experience in the field that'll help us not only figure out which population we'd like to work with, but also exactly how we want to work with that population, whether it's like direct clinical experience or case management type experience or working in a school setting or a business setting. And so I think gaining experience is definitely a great reason to take a gap year. And of course, if we get a paid experience or even just get a job during a gap year, we can make some money, pay off some of our student loans or pay them down if we are on student loans, or save dollars for graduate school. So then when you do get in the graduate program, you don't have to worry as much about, money. Also, I think, it can give you some time to better prepare your graduate student applications. It can be challenging in your senior year, or if you're getting ready to apply to your PhD, it can be very challenging in your third semester of your master's program to try to fill out all the graduate school applications, to research the graduate programs, to take your graduate school admission exams, write your personal statements, get your letters of recommendation, get your transcripts, and all the other things that you need to do to apply to the programs. So I definitely think that there's a lot of good reasons to take a gap year, but certainly it depends upon your own unique situation. If you know for certain what path you're going to be on, you already have gained experience during your education so far, you're not burned out, and you have enough time to fill out your graduate student applications, then it makes sense not to take a gap year. But I think for the rest of us, it probably makes more sense to take a gap year. All right, well, that's all I have to say for now. I hope you have a great day. Good luck in your decision for your future.